Next on the agenda for the public hearing is the ordinance to amend and reordain section 177-3 of the Warren County recreational shooting of firearms in Clearback subdivision. Mr. Daly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have received a petition requesting that Clearback subdivision be added to the list of designated locations where shooting of firearms is prohibited.
Is there any questions for Mr. Daly? No questions. This public hearing is now open. Mrs. Shiraki, has anyone signed up?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Brian Denino.
Can we get your name and address when you get to the podium, please?
My name is Brian Denino. I live at 3443 Rockland Road. I'm not going to talk about the Second Amendment here. After the December meeting, I'm sure the board knows where the county stands on this issue. I would like to address some of the things that have been said in this room and in the papers concerning the shooting at Rockland Road. I've been shooting all my life, and I've trained quite a few shooters. First thing I train them on is safety. There are no houses behind me. I have a backstop built out of 2 layers of railroad ties with dirt in between them. And I change those ties regularly when they, show damage. No one who has ever shot with me can claim that they have seen reckless or dangerous handling of firearms. I have some young ladies with me, but they didn't come up. They could attest to that. I've trained them recently. To say that we shoot daily is outlandish at best. To say that we shoot weekly would be a stretch. In the last, since mid-July, I've shot once on my property. I will admit to shooting for a few hours at a time, but it's not constant. We're target shooters, we're not blasters. And there's the claim from the golf course that they came over to talk to me about a wedding and I refused to stop shooting. That's a flat out lie. No one has ever come over and talked to me. If they would have, they'd have found me accommodating. I'd have stopped. I mean, it's a reasonable request, and I'm not an unreasonable guy. And finally, I'd like to touch on the real reckless and dangerous situation here. The false accusations of automatic weapons fire. Machine guns have been controlled by the 1934 National Firearms Act and the 1968 Gun Control Act. The ATF has a record of all illegally owned machine guns in the United States, and the county sheriff has to sign off on any transfers in the county. Since this is easy to find out, and I don't have any NFA weapons, what they've accused me of is illegal possession of a machine gun. And that leads to a 3 a.m. no-knock raid at my house by the ATF. And, I've been living in fear of that ever since I heard these accusations. The ATF abusers are well known in the gun community, and they're not forgotten. And I can only hope that the threat of death to me and my family was done through ignorance and not malice. And if you think I'm exaggerating, I can give you a list of the ATF abuses that happened. Breonna Taylor is a fine example of what happens at a no-knock raid and how that ends. And then finally, I'd like to add that the pop, pop, pop that Mr. Ayler was so annoyed about, that, my friends, is the sound of freedom. Thank you.
Mrs. Shiraki, anyone else signed up?
Yes, sir. James Denino.
Members of the board, I am James Nino. I also reside at 3443 Rockland Road, Front Royal, Virginia. I've been a lifelong resident of the area. I live up against farmland, as do a majority of other residents in the area. A subdivision is a rather misleading term. It is not set up as your quintessential subdivision with houses stacked upon one another. It's set up as it stretches and winds through Rockland Road. Houses are dotted alongside it. The only places where houses stack up would be the Clearback cul-de-sac. People in this neighborhood have been shooting there since before I was born, In a time since, very few houses have been built. It's not a densely populated area. It is rather peaceful, spacious, and quiet for the most part. If you have read the Royal Examiner's perspective, you would think it was a war zone. It, however, is just like any other rural community, quiet for most of the time, some gunfire scattered in the background. It was here where I first learned to properly handle a firearm and learned some simple rules to live your life by. Always keep your firearm pointed in a safe direction. Keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. Know your target and what is beyond it. And always treat the firearm if it is loaded. Know your firearm and know your target and what is beyond it. It indicates thought and foresight, and not the recklessness that the examiner states we are currently engaging in. No, the gun owners of the area are calm, collected, and good-willed people. Gun ownership comes with responsibility and liability. No one here wishes to endanger someone or has been endangered. 30 years of no incidents resoundingly contradicts the statement from the examiner telling us that we've been engaging in recklessness. As for another statement made by another resident, and a quote from the examiner, of one neighbor's nearby pasture land, Benzie said, her cattle go absolutely ballistic when they hear that weapons fire. It is just amazing. End quote. This is also misleading. I have worked side jobs on farms and have shot firearms on a farm in Milldale Road, only to have to stop because the owner's cattle came too close to us while we were shooting. This land was not used as a range regularly. They are not acclimated to the noise. They were not bothered by it nonetheless. The boldest lie yet. This touches on the automatic weapons fire, and I quote from the examiner, several weeks ago on Saturday, we all heard automatic gunfire for over 5.5 hours. This was nonstop gunfire. End quote. For those unfamiliar with the laws, automatic firearms have been heavily regulated by the ATF, as my father had already discussed about. To shoot any firearm for 5 hours straight continuously would be extremely costly, if you looked at the price of ammunition recently, and as well as irreparably damage the firearm. While not a machine gun owner myself, I hold a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. With this kind of sustained fire for 5.5 hours, the firearm will undoubtedly fail. It is not possible to keep that sustained rate of fire up, what is common in the civilian marketplace. Other accusations about the rates of fire and amount of it happening all throughout the day and throughout the week have been refuted by comments on the Facebook page post, What's Up Front Royal, when this article from the Royal Examiner had been posted. Many residents in the area have also refuted the fact that this has not been a daily occurrence. It does not happen throughout the day and every day. So one may wonder why suddenly this has become an issue after 30 years of people shooting back there, myself being part of that. It is not due to an influx of new houses being built in the area as to make it too dense to shoot in. Unless the cattle have suddenly become alarmingly skittish, that cannot be the reason either. No injuries, no property damage, or incidents being firearm related, so that can't be the sudden cause for concern. No, the reason is likely due to more and more houses being posted for sale. I'm sure those who are selling their properties are worried it will be a hard sell to those who are coming from more developed areas. If you choose to move to a rural community, you will hear gunshots, plain and simple. Every hunting season, farmers hunt. During the year, people practice safe firearm handling. There's a way of life in these areas that have gone undisturbed for decades. Until people got scared, some prospect from Nova would get skittish and bail. To push the various agendas, people have resorted to outlandish claims and flat-out lies publicly to try to force others to change their ways. I ask you to take this in consideration when you make your decision tonight. Thank you for your time.
Mrs. Shiraki, anyone else signed up?
Yes, sir. Malcolm Barr, Sr.
Chairman Mabe and members of the Board of Supervisors. Excuse me, I'm getting a little bit hoarse. I've been sitting here so long. My name is Malcolm Barr. My wife is Carol, and we live at 3577 Rockland Road within the Clearback subdivision. We're both in our 80s. Well, pardon me, my wife took exception to that. She'll be 80 in October. I'm 87. We retired to our own county home about 18 years ago to escape the hurly-burly of Washington and its suburbs, where we lived and worked for more than 25 years. In your folders, you'll find my prepared statement, which I submitted in the likelihood that I was going to be driving my son to Charlottesville today. It was not to be. So I'm here to stress the importance of maintaining the quiet in our historic and rural surroundings. I hasten to add that since James Harper circulated his petition and became locally known, and it became locally known that we were seeking a bylaw change to halt the sound of gunfire at any given daylight hour in our neighborhood, the silence has indeed been golden. Carol and I wish it would be so in the absence of any new law, but we fear not. The target shooting was heard again a couple of weeks ago or so, a sort of thumb through the nose, if you will. Just a brief volley, but a reminder that the target shooters are still among us, and apparently they are. It is my wife that I particularly speak for this evening. Suffering stage 4 lung cancer and surviving these past 10 years, she confines herself mornings and late afternoons for cancer treatments in a room set aside in the back of our house for such treatments for 2 hours each day. This has been going on for almost a decade. The seemingly incessant gunfire close to our house in the past year or 2 or 3, or I don't know how long, disturbed some of these treatments, which we believe has helped keep her alive, along with the inevitable chemo and radiation sessions and clinical trials that cancer victims must face and that she has faced for more than a decade. Also, you should know that recently we've heard ricocheting bullets that seem to be pinging off metal. This was disturbing to several of us in the area, including the golf course across the road from our house and the homes of several of our neighbors. Excuse me. I need a drink of that water, Mr. Mayor. Who knows where and how far these bullets might land? What are they firing at? Beer or soda cans, maybe? Thank you. Oh,
Ask for and you shall receive.
almost done. Relaxing on our deck, playing with the dogs, or working in the yard is at the very least, is disquieting to us, and for anyone, particularly when seemingly automatic weapons come into play, which has been increasingly often of late. Finally, I remind you and everyone that our support for an anti-noise bylaw to protect our neighborhood is not intended to be a diatribe against guns. It simply asks that those desiring to practice with firearms take themselves to an appropriately licensed place to do so and leave us to enjoy our rural environment where indeed silence is golden. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board.
Mr. Shiraki, has anyone else signed up?
Yes, sir. Sam Hahn.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. I'm probably sure you all are getting tired of seeing me come in here. I live at 134 North Fork Road. I actually don't live out in Rockland, but I was contacted by several of the individuals who do. I guess probably because I've been in here pushing ordinances and things like that for the Second Amendment. And honestly, I don't see this as a Second Amendment issue. This actually boils down to, you purchased a piece of property, you pay the taxes on that property. As long as you are not putting somebody else in violation, you should be allowed to do what it is that you're pretty much permitted to do on that property. I rode out and checked several of the areas that these folks shoot at. You had a gentleman come in here earlier and give you a whole long list of things that are proper. Well, that's for federal licensed shooting areas. That has nothing to do with private property. Private property within the county, they have certain, basically, ordinances that they have to fall under. These folks did that. They have an adequate background. I even took pictures while I was there in case you all wanted to see what it was they were shooting at. They're not putting anybody else in danger from where they're actually firing from. And so a lot of the reports and stuff that I've read, when I talk to their neighbors, you're going to find that none of them signed a petition. Some of them said they never even saw a petition. So it kind of makes me wonder where their petition got their signers at. One of the main things I'm going to say here is not going to make me popular. A lot of people are going to dislike what I'm about to say. When you move into an area, it's best that you go and check that area out before you move there. Because you have families that have grown up here that have done target shooting their entire lives. They know how to handle a firearm. You have people that move here from the city looking for that peace and quiet. Some of these neighborhoods aren't exactly where you want to live for that. And what you'll have is a lot of people who just move in and assume that they're moving into the country where it's nice and it's quiet and it's peaceful, but the reality is that's not true. So if they didn't do their due diligence and find out what kind of area they were moving into, I hate to say it, but you might be better off selling and looking for some place that's a little more your speed. Outside of that, you're going to hear from a few people who have done pretty much the same thing I did and actually researched this a little bit. So I'm going to step down and let them finish it. But like I said, I think this is more of a property rights issue than it is a Second Amendment issue. Thank you all.
Mrs. Shiraki, has anyone else signed up?
Yes, sir. Mike Salence.
Good evening. Mike Salence, 95 Murray's Drive. Just had a couple bullet points. One is people that use firearms typically take it pretty seriously. We're not just shooting in the air like it's some Wild West movie or something. The ricocheting you probably heard was likely metal targets being shot at, which are perfectly safe. You know, I'm trying to understand why this is all going through as well. It's a real overreach, and just kind of like Sam said, you know, we all live here. We like to shoot. People do. You know the neighborhoods that do. I mean, I live in a neighborhood where everybody loves guns, and we don't hear firing off like crazy. It's a waste of money. We do it for target, and not that frequently. I haven't heard of anybody being hurt, no threats. So the only thing I can come up with is that there really isn't a problem, and this is all for selfish reasons. If there's issues with noise, we have noise ordinances, right? So you already have laws for noises. So where do you draw the line? You know, is it going to be dogs barking next, or somebody's got a loud motorcycle? Just where do you stop? It's a real slippery slope, and I think once the door's open, there's no closing it again. You know, so I just urge you guys to not allow this to happen. I think we just need to leave the freedoms there where they are, and you know, deal with every situation as it comes along. If there's some circumstance where people are firing out like crazy, and they're trying to have a wedding, I'm sure if they would have come to his door, he would have stopped. So I find that to kind of be a far-fetched stretch of truth. Thanks.
Mrs. Shiraki, anyone else signed up?
Yes, sir. Joseph Babic.
How you doing? I prepared a statement, but I'd like to address a couple of things that were said real quick by this gentleman. He used again the word automatic weapons fire. That puts people at risk. Just like Mr. Denino said, I live at first of all, my name is Joe Babic. I live at 3475 Rockland Road. Him using that term, automatic weapons fire, that also could, just like he said, could cause my house to be raided. I'm one of the people that shoot on a regular basis, and by a regular basis, the last time we shot was July 3rd. That's what I'm saying by a regular basis. I pulled a Freedom of Information request for all the police reports in the area for 2 years. There was one report of fireworks in 2019 and 5 reports of firing of weapons in 2020. None of them were past 8 o'clock. The latest one was 7:55. And like I said, I have no idea who did that or who that was, but that wasn't us. But I will read a quick statement here. It says, hello, my name is Joseph Babic. I live at 3475 Rockland Road. I am very pro-shooting and dead against the shooting ban in Rockland. I have lived at the current address for 20 years and moved there from Apple Mountain. One reason for my move was the ability to target shoot in my backyard. There have been a lot of blatant false statements made in regard to this issue. The first and most dangerous was that automatic weapons were being fired and heard. At no time have I ever heard automatic weapon fire, never. This lie was repeated by a local newspaper. I guess you could call that fake news. The ATF may not know that me or my neighbors don't have automatic weapons and decide to raid our house. If my front door gets kicked in at 3 a.m., I will come down with a firearm. And God knows what could happen. But whatever happens, it could be blamed on the newspaper article and the person that lied originally. Another lie told was that my neighbor or myself were asked to stop shooting during a wedding. This never occurred. Mr. Harper has several neighbors sign a petition to stop the target practice in Rockland. He told different stories to all involved. Woody Morrison, the owner of Bowling Green Golf Course, sent my wife a message via Facebook asking how to get his name off of the petition. I did try to print this off, but wasn't able to. To any of you may ask Mr. Morrison to verify this. I also filled out a Freedom of Information request and got the police calls. None of the reports were after dark, as I said. I live directly across from the Shenandoah Golf Course and witnessed many firework displays. Never have I called the police. I believe the people living down the road from the course think the noise is gunfire since they can't see the light display. None of my neighbors has ever asked me to stop shooting. I hope this ban is rejected so I am not forced to move again. Thank you for your time, and for the ones of you that came out to visit and inspect my range, you can verify my bullets stop long before my property line. I have an earthen backstop to ensure that, and I have never shot before 8 or 9 a.m. in the morning, and never after dark. Thank y'all for your time, and I appreciate y'all's input.
Mrs. Shiraki, anyone else?
Yes, sir. James Harper.
My name is James Harper, 3658 Rockland Road in Front Royal, Virginia. Mr. Chairman and fellow supervisors, I'm here tonight to request the Board of Supervisors to amend Section 177-3 of the Warren County Code. This is in reference to recreational shooting in the Clearback subdivision. I am a Republican and have been since I was in the second year in college. I believe in the Bill of Rights. And some here tonight have spoken about the Second Amendment, and I agree with them. But there's more to it than just the right to bear arms. The Second Amendment says, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I'm not sure the Clearback subdivision needs a militia at this time, unless Joe Biden wins the election. I am retired like many in the Clearback area and enjoy my First Amendment right to live peacefully and enjoy those rights therein. As I mentioned on August 4th, 2020, everyone heard gunfire for over 5.5 hours on a Saturday. Many nights and weekends we hear the gunfire, and yes, it has gotten better. But if you fail to amend the county code, I'm sure we'll go back to the pre-August gunfire. For a minute, just think about sitting outside like today and enjoying a beautiful day. Automatic gunfire starts, bullets going into a metal target, bang, bang, bang. Is this enjoying our First Amendment right? The answer is no. When they shoot at a target that explodes like a cannon, is that enjoyable? The answer is no. Many of us have animals, and I can tell you they're not fans of the gunfire. Is it fair for the two houses to disrupt a neighborhood? The answer is no. Do bullets stop at their property line? The answer is no. I'd like to give Mr. Chairman colored copies of the two houses. You can see their property lines on here very easily. You can pass those back. You can see them. Bullets are not stopping at the property line. I'm trying to sell my home. Do you think automatic gunfire helps? I'm all for owning guns, but there's a better place, and that's a gun range or a large farm, not in a residential neighborhood. Speaking of Mr. Morrison, my dad lived on the Morrison's thing at Shenandoah in the 60s and 70s. And so I've been out there and spent many nights out there when I was little, when I was 10. And so I know the neighborhood. And if Woody, his sister comes to see me regularly just to chit-chat because we're old friends. And if Woody wanted to change his thing, he could have come and said to me, and I would have withdrawn his petition. And I have copies of the petitions, and hopefully Mr. Daly shared them with you. I'll give you all copies of everybody who signed. I didn't hold anybody's hand to the fire to make them sign those petitions. And it's interesting. Shenandoah Country Club right across the street from the two homes, he signed. The homes right on either side, Mr. Shrunk, he signed. Malcolm Barr, he signed. People in back. Woody Morrison, who owns the property behind him, signed. Ben Weddle, who owns the property side of Woody's in the back, he signed. I have signatures from the former supervisor, Ben Weddle, as I said, who owned the property behind, former town councilman Kermit Nichols and his wife, Joanne, Richard Runyon, the owner of Shenandoah Valley Golf Club, Maurice and Donna Lang, Larry and Margie Dillard, Judith Getty, Ruth Benzie, Malcolm and Carol Barr, Clay and Cindy Nettles, Willem and Juliana Dixhusen, Bob and Joe Naylor, Christine Banks and her mother, and their new neighbors, and they wonder what they've gotten into. Linwood Marson, who owns the property directly behind 3475 and 3443 Rockland Road. Connie and Richard Swanson, Susan Bowen, John Krauthammer, James Krauthammer, Peggy Herndon Hayden, Rich Strunk, Janet Harshman, Cliff and Lynn Lewis, Mert Hayden, Jean Eisner, who was here earlier, but you wore her out when you went over the bond issue. She left. Tim Roberts and James Harper. I'm not lying to you. If I wanted to lie something, I'd make up something better. It bothers me when people call me a liar. If I'm going to tell you something, I'm going to tell you the truth, and that'll be it. And I'm not going to make something up just to get my way. It's just awful when people come in here and make something up. But people on all the sides of those things, and if you come out, what drove me over the edge was the 5.5 hours one Saturday. My enjoyment in life, as I'm retired, is sitting outside reading a book with my dogs. That's the enjoyment I get. And to hear gunfire all the time, that's one of the reasons why I want to move. I don't want to listen to it. And on behalf of all these homeowners, I respectfully ask that you approve this request. We deserve to live in a safe and peaceful neighborhood. We want the same consideration as our neighbors on Bowling View subdivision, which is several hundred yards, well, half a mile away. We want the same consideration. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Shiraki, has anyone else signed up?
Yes, sir, Melanie Salence.
Hi, I'm Melanie Salence, 95 Murray's Drive. I'm here today to ask you to vote against the proposed shooting ban. This ban would erode our freedom, both gun rights and property rights. Most of us who purchased agriculturally zoned property in the county did so because we wanted the freedom to live a certain lifestyle. To remove the right to shoot on one's own land ruins that lifestyle that we bought into. If you want to live in an area that doesn't allow shooting, then don't buy into an area that allows shooting. I guess the question I have for all of you today is, do you like the direction society is headed? Do you want to live in a society where neighbors don't talk to each other to find compromises and work things out amongst themselves, but who would rather weaponize the government against their own neighbors to create bans? That is the trend, after all. If I don't like it, then it must be banned. There is no tolerance for others' freedoms, only a hyper-focus on worst-case scenarios of mights and maybes. I've heard the vague accusations being made against the neighbors who are shooting, but if the Board of Supervisors is to act as a judge, jury, and executioner, then there needs to be irrefutable proof of wrongdoing. Our laws say innocent until proven guilty. I would have to assume anyone shooting is doing so in a safe manner, in a responsible manner, unless there is proof beyond a reasonable doubt to show otherwise. I have seen no proof submitted of that tonight. Not a video, not a photo, not a log of shooting times and dates. And even then, wouldn't this be a matter best solved by the sheriff and covered by existing laws? I don't care for the manner and motivation in which this proposed ban was brought forth. I would ask you to reference page 252 in the agenda packet. The petitions include signatures from a total of 20 lots, but they appear to be more numerous because multiple adults per household were allowed to sign. Of those 20 lots, only 8 of the lots are actually located in the neighborhood for which the ban would apply. Of those 8 lots, only 2 are original owners. Half of the 8 only recently moved into the neighborhood. Why buy into an area that allows shooting and then want to change the rules for everyone else who's been there for years? I would ask that the signatures from the 12 lots of non-neighborhood residents be immediately discarded, as this ban would not be imposed upon them. Most of them live on the other side of Rockland Road or even farther away, and no one is shooting across the major roadway towards their homes. And if they did, that is already illegal and could be remedied with a call to the Sheriff's Department. Furthermore, the spokesperson proposing this ban does not live in the neighborhood in which this ban would apply. Coincidentally, as he said, he's selling his house. So it appears he wants this ban for personal financial gain. And I would urge you to validate these petition signatures, all of them, before taking them into account, because I have proof of at least one signatory who says the petition was presented to him falsely, telling him it was not a ban, but a time restriction on shooting. And I do have written proof that he wants his name removed from the signature list.
Thank you.
Can I see that as well? Or can you just tell me who it is?
In closing, I would ask you to look at the wording in the ban. The term "so heavily populated" is used. I ask you to reference your map on page 251 of this agenda. This is an area of large parcels and vast farmland. This is not heavily populated. This is a small cluster of houses surrounded by multiple 100+ acre parcels of land. That does not meet the definition of heavily populated. I worry that we are entering a slippery slope when we have people living outside of your own neighborhood who can ask for laws to govern against you in your neighborhood, but it won't apply to them. Isn't that the epitome of rules are for thee and not for me? Thank you.
Mr. Shiraki, has anyone else signed up?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Please. I'd like to respond as well.
But
Bear with me just a second, Mr. Harper. Okay.
Good evening. I'd like to address the board.
Yes, sir.
My name's Dan Murray, live at 20 Katy Lane, Middletown, Virginia, 22645. That way it's exact, because things get misconstrued. What we've heard tonight, I'd like to ask you, Mr. Chairman, is this country or is this city?
This is
Can you
county.
answer me?
This is county.
Now, where we live, would you consider it country or city?
I would consider it more country than city.
Thank you. That means no street lights, no curb and gutter, that we enjoy our surroundings. That's being attacked. I'm a firm believer in the Second Amendment. I was the second person to speak last fall at the gazebo. But I don't just consider this an attack of the Second Amendment. This is also an attack on property rights. You, sir, are an ex-Marine. I'm retired Army. If we heard shooting for 5 hours, we could pay our mortgage. And that's without exaggeration. Has there been any property damage? Has anyone been shot? If not, this is personal with an individual that wants to sell a property, and he's violating quite a few people's rights. And if those people whose rights are being violated should decide to take it to the courts, I would support them. This is a travesty. This should never, ever have to come to this point. 8 years I sat on that board. Not once did this come up. Not once from that association to a house went up for sale.
Mr. Chairman.
I think this is wrong. Sir, I have the floor. Please.
A little courtesy here.
Thank you. That's what I expect from you. I need to know how we could get to this point. I understand petitions. I understand how you can be falsely accused and drugged into the courts with false petition information. This is wrong. Mr. Maid, I know the individual who's running this charge, and I ask you to abstain from voting because he was one of your biggest supporters. Thank you. I'd like to can I say something else, sir?
Bear with me just a second. Mr. Murray, I appreciate what you said, I won't sustain or abstain, only because, yes, Mr. Harper helped me in my campaign to win this seat. He was not my largest supporter. We had one real meeting. He supported me. I thanked him for that. I made no promises to him. I made no even pointed discussions with him that it would cause me to change any vote that came in front of me. And you can take it to the bank, sir.
Mr. Chairman, the reason why I asked you to abstain is that I didn't want to have you have the inference of a political payback. That was trying to protect you.
And that is not happening, sir. I promise you. Mr. Harper, you wanted to say something additional?
Go ahead, I'll defer.
Joe Bacic again. I'd just like to follow up on something that Mr. Harper did say. First thing he said was he was not a liar. Then he turned around and said he heard automatic weapons fire. He also turned around and he said bullets don't stop at the property line. You all have inspected my range. You all saw there's no possible way bullets get out of my yard. So I just wanted to clarify that before it got any deeper, that Mr. Harper is correct on that. And when he says he hears ricocheting, he doesn't hear any ricocheting. He may hear steel targets, but what they're made to do is made the bullet drop to the ground so it doesn't go shooting off in different directions. Thank you.
Mr. Harper, do you have anything else?
No, that's okay. Well, I will say one other thing. I will congratulate Mr. Murray on his new job. I volunteer for CCAP on Mondays and Wednesdays, and I take their recycling to the place near 66. And on Wednesdays, I see Mr. Murray operating the trash recycle there, so I would congratulate him on his new position as trash man out at the recycle place.
If I may, please.
Yes,
For
sir.
8 years while I was on the board, I was given the key to run it because it looks like a pigsty and I sweep up and clean there. If you saw me on a Wednesday and you're dumping illegally, you should be fined.
Oh, sir, Mr. Harper, Mr. Harper, Mr. Murray, no more. You're done.
Yep, have a seat.
You're done, Mr. Harper.
When
I
somebody
appreciate it.
accuses me of something,
I
I'm not dumping
understand,
on
and
Wednesdays.
it's coming from you.
I saw Mr. Murray dumping on Wednesday. He dumps trash on Wednesday.
Okay.
I recycle. and
Sir,
it's
this
open
has
on
gotten
Wednesday.
childish.
Mr.
Please
Harper,
stop.
please. Thank you.
Yeah. There's nobody else, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Mr. Mabe, somebody else would like to speak.
Who would like to speak?
I'm sorry I didn't sign in.
Yes, ma'am. You're more than welcome to come up and speak with us.
I don't want. I'm Susan Bowen. I live on Rockland Road. I'm a cattle farmer. My husband and I are cattle farmers. I'm very much opposed to the shooting that I hear. I'm very much regret, gentlemen and ladies,
Ma'am,
that you
could
don't,
you
that they
speak
do.
to us, please?
I'm sorry, I apologize. I guess I'm saddened to hear what I'm hearing tonight, that the disrespect for those of us who live in the country, and I've been there nearly 75 years on a family farm, 4th generation. And I love the peace there, and I guess they have no respect that I would like to live in a quiet atmosphere. They completely disregard our wish to live in a peaceful and quiet community. And I've lived there nearly 75 years, and I have never heard gunshot like I'm hearing now from these people. I've never heard it before in all these years. And I'm just very saddened by it all. I'm not against the Second Amendment. I know they're not going to kill anybody or hurt anybody. It's just the noise. It's not that they're not being safe. And I know they appreciate their freedom. But don't we count too? Don't the people that want to live on our farms and in our communities, in our homes, don't we have rights too to have a peaceful existence? I'm just terribly saddened tonight. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? This public hearing is now closed. What is the pleasure of the board? Do we have a motion from the board?
I move that the Board of Supervisors deny the request to amend Section 177-3 of the Warren County Code to add the Clearback subdivision to the list of designated locations where recreational shooting of firearms is prohibited.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Do we have any additional discussions amongst the board? Could we get a roll call, please, Mrs. Shiraki?
Ms. Oates?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Ms. Colors?
Aye.
Mr. Fox?
Aye. May I make a comment, please? I've listened to everybody on both sides, and I understand. But what I don't understand is why this community or these communities that work around each other are not communicating with each other. And they are not communicating for what reason, I don't know. I have talked to these people. I have talked to Mr. Harper. I mean, I've spoken to you many times, Mr. Harper. And if there is a question, problem, or moan from anybody, if y'all would communicate, you would eliminate the problem. If there's a wedding going on and they talk to the people that are shooting, and you obviously know who's shooting and who's not. You talk to them and say, hey, we got a wedding going on. Or, hey, I've got a house showing. Would you not shoot between 2 and 4? Or would you not shoot on Saturday afternoon because I've got a party? You're not doing it. And you want us to decide for everybody that we're going to change everybody's life because of this. It's a recreational community. It is a community where you went out there and you bought the land knowing that there's people that's going to be shooting. People have been living out there 30 years, 50 years. You know, I'm sorry. I've got a good opinion on this. And I want very seriously to get y'all to communicate. 6 months from now, it may be different, and you're welcome to bring it back, but not now.
And
Thank
I'd
you.
like to say, I do respect everybody's difference of one wanting quiet and one not. But I did go out and I did look, and it is safe. And I have lived near a railroad where, honestly, I got to the point where I didn't even pay any attention to the railroad whistle. Maybe that's just me, but I learned it, I just didn't pay attention to it. I do live very rural where there's a lot of shooting that goes on in my area. I don't pay any attention to it. Maybe I should more than I do, but I don't. So that just was not enough of a reason to be so restrictive. I would like to say, Mr. Babbitt, from seeing your area, and I do believe it's safe, one concern I do have is the couple of trees that are right in behind your area. And I'm sure you checked before, but my only concern, I don't know how many children are in the area of maybe cutting down a couple of them that are directly behind, just in case a child would get in there between.
Where I couldn't see them.
Right. That was the only thing of concern I saw there. And I do feel, I didn't speak to the other gentleman, but I do You seemed very reasonable, and you said, by all means, if anyone ever asked you to stop shooting or you knew a wedding was going on, you wouldn't do that anyway. And I believe that you seem like an honest man, and I believe that you will hold true to that.
Do we need a 5-minute break, a bio break for anybody? You okay?
You good, Emily?
Thank you.
Thank you.